The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a very special returning guest, James O'Keefe. His new organization is called the O'Keefe Media Group, and you know him and you love him because he's done better than pretty much anyone at putting some very nefarious people on the spot and force them to answer questions, or at least run away from questions that they otherwise would not want to answer. The first thing I want to talk to you about, James, you sent me signed copies of all your books. I've been going through them. Look at this infant on the cover of this book. If you could go back in time and talk to this child, because look at a baby face, what would you say to him? Because this book came out in 2013. Yeah.
Exactly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts. What would I say to him? I would say
I'll hold it up so you can see it.
well, there you go.
That
There it is.
kid.
I shot that in New York City at a studio with a bunch of left-wing videographers and photographers. And I was sort of posing this, and I was
Blue Steel.
I had just gotten off of federal probation for 3.5 years. I was on supervised probation, and I was a free man. I started working out. Andrew Breitbart had died. I've thought about this idea of like regret and like, is there anything that you wouldn't do? I think I had to go through all these things to learn lessons,
Yep.
and then that I applied in the future. So I think there was a little bit of idealism, and naivete about human nature. That probably was my greatest issue that I learned over the last decade. In other words, people took advantage of me or hurt me because I believed that they were out to help me. So I think but then again, people told me that, and I just had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
So I mean, other than that, I think we're kind of in new territory here. No one's really ever written a book about what we're going through. So, but the number one thing I'd say is people say, James, not everyone's out there to help you. Not everyone's mission driven.
Yeah.
People are really out to FUCK. I don't know if I can say that on the air here, but
Yes, you can. And racial slurs.
and no racial. I mean, I report other racial slurs, but people are really out to fuck you, basically.
Yes.
And I know that's like a cliche, and everyone always says that, but I think my upbringing and how I was raised, and I want to believe the best in people, and oftentimes people really let you down. I think that probably would be an older James would say to a younger James.
I think one of the things you talked about in this book, and I've experienced this in my career, is people underestimate, especially when you're young, how brazen and blatantly people will do what they need to kind of stab you in the back, even knowing that this is going to harm their own personal reputation, and they won't even be kind of they won't even put a kind face about it. They'll just be blatantly doing things because you're a threat to their status or their power, or they just simply don't like you. And that's kind of hard to wrap your head around when it's people who are in some sense like fellow travelers in a cause that you believe in. And you're like, I looked up to you. I thought you were a good person. And now you're just treating me like, like a Clinton victim.
I mean, the betrayal is the hardest thing. And,
Yeah.
one of the FBI sources that we interviewed last year, one of the things he said, his name is Kyle Seraphin is his name. And he said the paycheck and the pension leads to the Holocaust. That's what he said, which is a very profound and highly existential statement. But I found most people in life just want the paycheck. That's really what it comes down to. It's just the paycheck. And it's quite hurtful to see people behave that way. It's certainly not what drives me or whatever motivates me, but it's the majority of people, and frankly, it's the majority of people in a movement that's ostensibly about helping people and the cause and the public policy and changing the world. Like, I don't know, 99% of people in that movement just want the paycheck, and that's very. It makes you sad. It makes you sad. I don't know if it makes me angry or sad or both. I guess I went you go through different phases of grief. I think Tucker Carlson said it most recently when he was removed. Did you see the interview that he did
Oh
before he
yeah.
was right before he was removed? And one of the things he said, let's see if I can pull it up here, is he says it makes him sad to see people saying things they don't believe in just to keep their jobs. And it's a tale as old as time, but it's certainly something that I've seen. Let me see if I can pull up the direct quote. Yeah, there it is. You see people revealed as cowards,
Yeah.
saying things they don't believe because they want to keep their jobs, and you're so disappointed in them. And you realize that maybe the herd instinct. And by the way, open up that book Breakthrough.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah,
Dedicated to the idealist sitting in a classroom or an office whose conscience tells him of course, to take a stand against the status quo, and whose courage allows him to ignore the world around him, which tells him to sit down, shut up, and comply.
there,
Amen.
there it is. And Tucker's quote again a few days before he was removed, and to not be cast out of the group and to not be shunned. That's a very strong impulse in people from birth, and it takes over in moments like this. And it's harnessed, in fact, by bad people
Yes.
in moments like this. And you see people going along with this, and you lose respect for people. You begin to realize that the way you thought of the world is no longer. Um, and how could you go along with this knowing that it's not true? And so that's the metamorphosis that I've been through. In the last 10 years. Perhaps I was naive. Perhaps I'm still naive. Perhaps one needs to be naive in order to do this, or you have to be, as I said to you in the last interview, a masochist. One or the other, I
I
guess.
I think I would bet money you would agree. I would rather be naive and become disillusioned than to start out as a cynic and remain a cynic.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Because sometimes people can let you down, but a lot of times they won't. And those ones that don't, the ones who are ride or die, who really are good people through and through, those to me are the ones that matter.
is that like better to love than never to?
Kinda.
What's the saying?
Better
Better
to have
to.
loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Yeah, it's kinda like that.
I think so because there's a lot of good in the world. Here's a question for you: is it good people doing bad things, or bad people doing bad things, or what is the combination there? Is it the bad things that we're seeing are the line that separates good and evil runs through each and every one of us, every human heart. So we were talking about Solzhenitsyn last time. So what percentage of these people are actually decent people just doing bad things, or are they
I
just
I
bad people?
I think they're animals, not in a savage way, but if you tell a dog to roll over, it knows if I do this, I get a reward. So they're not thinking in terms of morality. They're just thinking of, okay, I'm getting a treat if I do this. I if you tell me to go bite this guy approaching the house, even though my instincts are to be friendly, I'm gonna do it because that's what my master wants. And they shut off that higher part of their brain that is what makes us human, which is their conscience. And I think you see it over and over, and you will find any rationalization to justify, oh, you're too idealistic. I've got a family. There's no, and the corporate press will have no shortage of reasons to tell you why you're doing the right thing, to sell out your values and to compromise and to throw people you like under the bus.
Really profound. There's sort of a disinformation bubble that exists amongst the people
Yes.
who made these decisions, like a North Korean style disinformation bubble. Logic, reason, nothing matters if they're rationalize their own decisions. And
Yes.
I'm in the business of confirming fraud and corruption and truth in a cinematic way, with the idea of shaking people awake, um, and kind of testing the boundaries of that moral order. Like I try to create, we create morality through journalism by exposing through informed consent. But if that doesn't work on people that are good, that I thought were good, and they just engage in their own disinformation bubble, and they put the
Yep.
it's fair, man. You got to be really have a firm constitution to not be disillusioned to the point of losing all hope. You know. So that, anyways, there's a lot to say about that.
There's a few references in this book that were kind of cryptic that I want to pick your brain on. The first one is her name pronounced Lila Rose? Is that Lila's how she's pronounced?
Lila Rose.
Yeah. So you worked with her in the Acorn Stings. You mentioned here that her attorney was David French. Is that the David
Well,
French?
actually, Lila Rose, I work on the Planned Parenthood stings
Sorry.
in
Right, sorry.
2007, 2008 timeframe. Yeah, David French is an attorney at the time. This is 15 years ago. For I can't remember the name of the group, but he was her lawyer in California.
Does that kinda what are your thoughts about David French since and his career now?
I don't follow him too closely. I think he's become more
Okay.
of like an anti-Trump guy, but I can't comment because I don't recall exactly what he's said and done. He represented Lila because she was sued under California's Penal Code 632, and Planned Parenthood sent me a cease and desist letter. Her and I a cease and desist letter. There's a $1 billion corporation threatening me with this criminal statute or cease and desist publishing this video. The video showed a Planned Parenthood official in Santa Monica counseling Lila and I to lie about her age so that she can get an illegal abortion. She was saying that she was 14 or 15, and they said, quote, just figure out a birth date that works. This is what they said that we caught on tape. I was holding this camcorder, sort of, and she was undercover at the Santa Monica Planned Parenthood. And we get sent the cease and desist letter, and there was a part of me, Michael, that was like, maybe I should just back down. Um, but I would say it was a mischievous part of me that said, people need to see this cease and
Yeah.
desist letter. So I would characterize it as mischief more than a desire for anything. I was like, yeah, people need to see this. People need to know what this is. So I forwarded it to someone who forwarded it to Bill O'Reilly at the time. And Bill O'Reilly invited Lila and David French on the air. And this diminutive 18-year-old UCLA freshman is under attack by this
Yeah.
Leviathan. And shockingly, Planned Parenthood rescinded the legal attacks. And I think that was a very early lesson for me, um, that sometimes you just sort of have to run towards the fire.
Folks, I'm really excited about this sponsor. Now, you guys know that one of the surest paths toward depression is giving up your guns or not having one when you need it, which is why I want to talk about a big mistake people make with their holsters. The mistake is they get one that's so uncomfortable you stop using it, meaning your quest to defend yourself or your family falls apart at the start. That's why the Vanish holster is quickly becoming one of the most popular holsters in America. Thousands of customers say it's the most comfortable holster ever, and when you get one, you'll never stop carrying, and it also saves you money. Because if it's 99% of all semi-automatic handguns, works without a tactical belt, lets you carry multiple positions, and carries 2 fully loaded magazines. Best of all, because you're a dear reader and a supporter of our podcast, you get it for $50 off. Go to vnsh.com/malice. Activate your discount today. It's normally $130. You get a steal as a You're Welcome fan. Go to vnsh.com/malice today to claim your $50 discount. I am absolutely ecstatic to welcome them to the show. Folks, did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? And if you wake up too hot or too cold, I recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. They're inspired by NASA. Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. These fabrics were inspired by NASA. They're thermoregulating. They're designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long. You get better sleep every night. And because they're infused with silver, that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth. They stay cleaner, fresher, 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. And they're very comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. They feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Clean sheets means less bacteria to clog your pores, fewer breakouts, and other skin problems. All you got to do is go to trymiracle.com/malice to try Miracle Made sheets today. And with Mother's and Father's Day right around the corner, this is the perfect way to give someone you love the gift of better and more luxurious sleep. Not a bad idea. Save over 40%. Be sure to use the promo code MALICE at checkout to save even more, and you get 3 free towels. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, you get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code MALICE to get your free 3-piece towel set. Save 40% off. That's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself to a better night's sleep. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. Something else you mentioned here, which I was really interested to hear. In the book, you mentioned that Matt Taibbi hated your mentor, Andrew Breitbart.
Mhm.
Taibbi's recently gotten some acclaim as releasing the Twitter files, and he actually got into it a little bit with Elon Musk because apparently there's an issue with promoting your Substack on Twitter, and
Mhm.
Elon unfollowed Taibbi. Can you talk a bit about this animosity between the two of them, or if it was one way, maybe?
Between Andrew and Taibbi, and when Andrew died,
Yeah.
March 1st, 2012, I remember Taibbi wrote a scathing column. Maybe your listeners can Google it. It was he was calling. I think he called Andrew the C word or some horrible. I can't recall exactly what. But listen, I mean, these are animosity between two personalities. There are things that Matt Taibbi disagrees with politically with Andrew Breitbart, perhaps there's things that, I mean, I don't really take a political stance on anything, but there are things that he disagrees of, or he disagrees I'm exposing. But I tend to want to look at the Venn diagram and where that overlaps, more
Okay.
so than where we all disagree. And I would point to the presidency of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or who's running for president rather, and he's now achieved 20% of Democratic voters are supporting him. And this is a guy who probably disagrees with conservatives on a lot of issues like the environment and what have you, but he's raising attention to this sort of issue of the nexus between corporate power and government
Yeah.
power, which is something that Taibbi is raising, which is something that I'm raising, which is something that Andrew Breitbart is raising. So I think these things that I know it sounds like I'm going to sound a little bit like a hippie here, but the things that unite us are I believe, more powerful than whatever petty personality disagreements. That's how I saw it. Was a personal animus of some type.
I think it's funny because I think conservatives now realizing that, the hippies weren't all that bad. If you go back and you're like, they hated war. Okay, maybe they were a little too bohemian, too hedonistic, too unhygienic. But if that's the worst that the left has to offer, like kind of kind of being a schlub and not killing people overseas, is that really so bad compared to what's going on nowadays? It's kind of like they go back, they're like, these guys really weren't so awful.
Yeah, it does seem to me like the everything's changing. Again, I point to that RFK phenomenon. I met RFK Jr. In the last 6 months, and he's supported the work that we've done on the pharmaceutical industry. And he's on a mountaintop. He tweets a picture out of me, February 15th or so. It's on Twitter. I just retweeted it recently again. And then I was removed from Project Veritas that week. But now he's running for president for the Democratic nomination.
Right.
So I think things are changing, and it's hard to know what left and right means anymore. It's hard. I think it's more of like a spiritual war now that we're fighting. Um,
Oh yeah.
right versus wrong. That's the really interesting question is morality. How do you define morality anymore? What is good versus bad? What is right versus wrong? As a journalist, you say, truth versus fiction, left versus right. No, it's good versus evil, right versus wrong. What is wrong? And how do you shake people awake with some semblance of morality? One of the things I'm doing right now, and one of the things I'm launching next week, is I'm launching a series of master classes through
Wait,
OMG.
hold on. Let me interrupt you because that's going to be the next segment. There's just one more question about the book, then I do want to talk about OMG. And by the way, if you look, the subtitle of my last book is A Tale of Good and Evil, so you're speaking exactly my language. So there's just one more cryptic reference in this book where you said something about Glenn Beck kind of turning his shoulder on you guys. Can you
Oh yeah,
talk a bit about that?
oh yeah. That's actually interesting. People haven't asked me about that in 9 years,
Oh,
so
okay.
I like the
I'm a
obscure.
hipster.
No, it's good. When I did a story on NPR in March 2011, this is a big story. It prompted the CEO of NPR to resign, a woman named Vivian Schiller. It was a hidden camera recording of a guy in a restaurant in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., disparaging Jews, the Tea Party, and saying, that, those gun toting white people and all these sorts of, you know, bombastic statements. This is the vice president of fundraising for National Public Radio. He resigned. His name is Ron Schiller, no relation to the CEO, Vivian Schiller. She resigned. And this is a massive story, and I broke it on my own. I broke it through Veritas. This is like the first big story through Veritas. Acorn was before Veritas, and this was really, and it was through two guys that worked with me, Sean Adelaide and Ken Larry were the undercover reporters. Very brave, two brave guys that had this camera. This is about to get to Glenn Beck. The camera was in a I guess you could call it a pocketbook that was sitting on an adjacent table and captured him perfectly in frame. And I released the full raw video. It was a 2.5 hour video. At the time, Michael, all the attacks on me was that I doctor tapes,
Right.
I edit tapes. They still say that sort of, but not as much. They say I hired these people to be the subjects. I use CGI manipulative techniques to move the lips. First of all, I was so broke, I could barely even. I mean, the notion that I would using CGI, I don't even barely know how to use Final
Wait,
Cut.
they accused you of a deep fake before those even existed? That's
I don't
amazing.
even think it was a thing. I mean, but
Yeah.
they meaning my political opposition. I don't even
Yeah.
know why they're opposed, but they were coming up with any conceivable way that what they were looking at was not real. Okay, so that was happening. So to counter this, I decide to release the full raw tape, which no journalist ever does. Katie Couric doesn't do it. Mike Wallace doesn't do it. 60 Minutes doesn't do it. But I'm trying to do the right thing in a journalism ethic where I'm under assault in a way that no other investigative reporter is. And Andrew Breitbart, still alive at the time, said, James, you have to hold yourself to the highest standard, to ridiculous standards, standards Pulitzer Prize winners don't hold themselves to. Okay, fine, I did it. In this raw recording, the NPR vice president makes statements that I have to redact. He's talking about his reporters in Libya. He names them. I can't
Okay.
publish that. That would be unethical for me to publish that. As much as it would be unethical for me to publish, I believe, like the Crowder thing that happened, I don't want to publish private disputes in a marriage or in a bedroom. So I redacted that part of the tape. Follow me? Glenn Beck and his Blaze, this is now, we're in March, April 2011, publishes a scathing attack on me and
Oh,
says, did O'Keefe doctor this tape? And he points to the redaction that I made in the raw tape. And he goes, it's unclear why O'Keefe chose to, and I'm paraphrasing, it's unclear why O'Keefe chose to omit the audio of section 2 hours and 11 minutes to 2 hours and 11 minutes and 36 seconds. And I was like, it was like Kafkaesque. I was like, what do you want me to do? You want me to release the raw tape? I do that. I redact a part to protect the Libyan reporter, and then you attack me for redacting. And of course, all the New York Times, and everyone cited Glenn Beck and said even Glenn Beck thinks the O'Keefe report, and this is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the even logic. Even this person thinks. That was another lesson in life, and then of course what I learned was no, I'm not going to release the raw tape because even if I do that, it doesn't satiate them. Hell, even if I release the tape from the moment I walk into the building to the moment I walk out, they'll just say, "Well, how do we know you didn't turn the thing back on and walk in again?"
Right.
Like, I mean, you
Did he reach out to you to ask why you cut that segment?
I don't believe so. The guy's name was
Okay.
Scott Baker, who was an editor at the Blaze who had a dispute with Andrew Breitbart. So
Okay.
I was caught in the middle. Maybe I shouldn't be saying all this, but I'm a pretty honest guy, and it's 10 years ago, so I'm just going to tell you the truth. This is the truth. It's sort of in the weeds here, but Scott Baker worked for Andrew Breitbart, left Breitbart to work for Glenn Beck, and Scott Baker issued a scathing attack upon me. And the question is, why would he do that? Is it to get in the left wing press? Is it to be beloved by the New York Times? He got that. In fact, for many years, if you Googled him, all you would see is all the attacks against me. And I was very, man, that was really hard. That was probably at that moment. I mean, I'd been jailed, I'd been on probation, I'd been through many various things. That was really hard because it was sort of like not betrayal, but it was like people that were supposed to be allying with you in this proverbial fight for justice and truth were hurting you ostensibly to advance themselves. That's what it seemed like. And I remember, people like Larry O'Connor and Andrew were really, I mean, these guys were really hurt for me. And I learned so many lessons. I mean, I learned a little bit about human nature. I spent weeks grieving over that. I had Bob these are all the journalism kings. Bob Garfield at National Public Radio on the phone with me for an hour on the air talking about this Glenn Beck thing, and that was rough. That was a rough thing to go through.
Folks, the Wall Street Journal warned, don't just sit there, do something. And Wall Street's wisest advice this time is to sell in May and go away. Morgan Stanley warns that commercial real estate is heading for a crisis worse than 2008. It's no longer a black swan, it's a flock of black swans. With the banking crisis, commercial real estate, de-dollarization, rate hikes, and persistent inflation, BRICS is the hottest ticket in town, with 19 additional countries looking to join and move away from the US dollar. And the Chinese yuan just passed the dollar as the most used currency in China's cross-border payments in March for the first time ever. And it's no wonder Google searches for how to buy gold hit record levels in April 2023. That's not that long ago. It's as simple as calling the Patriot Gold Group today to get your hands on some gold. Find out why they are A-plus Consumer Affairs top-rated gold and silver company nationwide. Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late and mention my name. That's Michael Malice. You'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots, protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA on qualifying rollovers. All you got to do is call 888-505-9845 and get a free investor guide today, or just go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer 6 years in a row. So call 888-505-9845 or just go to malicegold.com. Protect your money. Let's get back to the show. Well, speaking of rough things, before we get to the O'Keefe Media Group, very publicly, you and Project Veritas, which was your baby, parted ways. I'm sure this was traumatic, to put it mildly. You just mentioned earlier that you had released a 45-minute statement regarding it. Can you just briefly, for those who aren't aware of the situation from your perspective, I'm sure you've been asked this many times, but first of all, it can't have been fun. I mean, this must be very disturbing. You were very much closely in the public eye. You and Project Veritas were perceived as one and the same. Can you talk a bit from your perspective about how things went down?
Oh boy, that's a very broad question. I can answer it I did a 45-minute long departing remarks only to my staff. About half the staff showed up that day. Maybe a little less, because we have some remote workers and some of the ones who didn't. This was on February 20th. First, I'll say that you should watch that if you haven't. I retweeted it. Your audience can watch it. If you haven't watched it, that really is from the heart. I was very vulnerable. I was very honest. I was very sincere, without disparaging anybody. But I gave some facts. I learned a lot of things through this whole experience. I never really focused on board of directors management. I never really thought about that. For those of you who don't know, 501c3s, which we were, are required to have a board. And you might say, what does that mean? Well, a board, a nonprofit isn't owned by me. It's governed. It's tax deductible. And I never really thought about who was on my board. I never really focused on the bylaws. I never really. It was inconceivable that something like this might happen, and that's my mistake. And I think I built a great journalism team, a great production team. I built a great series of core values, and I believe I built a great company. I was the CEO. I was the chairman. I was the founder, and I did a little bit of everything. It was unusual because I was responsible for the majority of the fundraising. We didn't really have a big fundraising team. We were a $25 million company, and most nonprofits have all they do is fundraise.
Right.
I was on the road making very aggressive asks. I was working probably 80 to 90 hours a week, always moving, always going around. A lot of that stuff was used against me. They said you take too many meetings, you travel too much, you travel in SUVs as opposed to Uber X's, and this is an improper expense. I mean, they're wrong. That's not improper. It's perfectly justified, especially when you're targeted like I am, and especially when you're on the phone with sources. like in the Pentagon. You don't want to be in an Uber X.
Right, right.
So it was really bizarre, and it didn't actually make any actual sense. And if I tell you what happened, it's only going to lead your listeners more confused with more questions. A lot of people thought the timing was suspect. We did a story on Pfizer just
Right.
days before, and that was circumstantial evidence. I often say it was either really stupid to do it days after the Pfizer biggest story of our career, or someone was compromised, or both. And the only thing that's changed about me in the last 15 years, because I've always been a difficult guy to work for. I'm definitely intense. I definitely pull people that don't want to be pulled. Um, and that's what I think a good leader does. You try to bring the most out of people, and you can't teach hunger. Um, but I think that's what a leader's supposed to do. That was weaponized against me. I was definitely a driven man. I am a driven man. I'm very specific. I expect a lot of people, and I'm an exacting taskmaster. And I'm an artist. I'm a creative director. So it was a very bizarre thing. I don't really have all the answers. Maybe answers will come out eventually. But I would point you to an article written by Dr. Robert Malone called "The Institutional Pathology" that removed James O'Keefe from Veritas, and he talks about the sort of psychology of being a leader, and I don't want to paraphrase it, but people kind of coming after you as the talent, as the chief executive officer. The same sort of thing happened to Travis Kalanick at Uber. He founded Uber. These sorts of happened to what's his name? Apple, Steve
Yeah,
Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
And
Yeah.
look how that turned out. Now, I'm not Steve Jobs, but they fired Steve Jobs from Apple in 1985. He started another company Next, and then Next was acquired by Apple. So it's I wouldn't necessarily attribute to malice, pun intended. I wouldn't attribute to malice and bribery what we can attribute to sort of perhaps a pathology um, that is a part of an organization where you have someone like me at the helm.
Well, no, it was definitely me. I did it, and I'll do it again.
Exactly.
Um, just
Well
one
played.
last question.
Well played.
One last question on this before we move on to your new venture. Of They went after you very publicly, very hard. Of
Mhm.
all the criticisms that were levied against you, which would you say is the most accurate, and which would you say is the least accurate?
A good question. I mean, a lot of the criticisms are admitted. Like I did take black cars to meetings. In fact, I think I'm going to take black cars to every meeting now. I'm going to take up. I might be calling the master class the Black Car Academy. I pull up to the Cronkite School in a black car. I don't know what matters why it's black or green or red or white. There was all this stuff about black cars. I don't get it. Do you? Does anyone understand?
Well, I think black car is a shorthand term like Scotch tape for a certain type of luxury vehicle.
Okay, admitted. Yes, I definitely did that. And I mean, and I probably flew private maybe once a year or so. If I had like a lot of meetings on a given day or had to get someplace fast, when you're a chief CEO of a $25 million company, you have 70 employees. Your time is precious.
Yes,
You could
yes.
get 100 grand from this grant, and then you got to go on camera, and then you got to go to this state. It's just economics. It's basic economics, um, which some people understand and some people resent. For example, one person made a statement. I'm paraphrasing. Said, there should be this. Everyone should make. I'm paraphrasing. He said,
Yep.
you shouldn't. He shouldn't be doing that while everyone else does something else. In other words, everyone should make the same amount of money. Well, that's called socialism, and that won't work in an organization. I can't pay everyone the same. I can't make the same money that the intern's making. I can't
Right.
stay in. I have to have a secure driver. And not because I want one. Trust me, I don't want security. But when your life is threatened, and when you're on the phone with sensitive sources, you can't just get in the car with anybody. I've made that mistake before, and my undercover people got burned. So it was sort of like this pathology. So do you don't want me to have security guard? Okay, I won't have one. Or you don't want me to take a secure driver? Okay, then the undercover people will get burned. It was pathological, and I fought back to the extent that I could, but I was outnumbered by the people in authority, and that's my mistake because you have to learn that lesson. And I think we're entering a world, and this is let's be forward looking here. You're entering a world where I think it's harder to find rational people. I just think it's harder to find rational executives. I mean, Generation Z and millennials, they're entitled. They all feel like they deserve everything. They don't have to work for it. And this has been a phenomenon that's happened in the last 5 to 10 years. As far as what's inaccurate, I mean, any allegation of misspending, there wasn't. I mean, they didn't put anything up. Um, so I would say that was hyperbole, really, more than anything else.
So let's talk about the O'Keefe Media Group. Before we even start talking about that, is there this kind of sense that like holy crap, I got to start from ground zero, or is it more like, you know what, now this left my bad taste in my mouth. This is an opportunity for me to kind of keep going with the work I've been doing so successfully for the last over a decade.
Well, an advisor of mine said, when you're a boxer and you get hit hard in the face and you fall to the ground, they give you a count. I believe it's 9 or 10, and
Yeah,
you're wounded. You're wounded. It hurts. The pain, I mean, we've all been through pain in life, right? You've been through pain.
of course.
Everyone, whether it's the death of a loved one, loss of a job, your illusion is shattered. Okay, and my illusions have been shattered repeatedly. I mean, every month, each month for 15 years, my illusions have been shattered. Some more than others. Um, this was a giant shattering blow. When this happened on February the 6th, I was in so much pain that, or actually a few days prior, I was in so much pain that I was on the floor of my bathroom in my hotel, gasping for air, like almost like dry heaving.
I've
Um,
been there. I was in the fetal position in the kitchen floor once when I did my first book, and my editor called me, and he just read me a new one. And the way Jeremy, F you, Jeremy, he says to me, "Don't worry, it's too late to hire a new writer." That was supposed to be reassuring.
oh, oh God, that's a lot of people are there's a lot of sadism in this world, lot of sadism. We've all been there many times in our life in
Yeah.
different ways. It hits differently when your raison d'etre
Yeah.
is to expose and do the right thing. Because as a founder of a company, a founder, I was in my dad's garage on federal
Yeah.
probation with nothing. Not just nothing, negative equity. I didn't even have money. I had credit card debt. And I'm not talking like venture capital debt. I mean like $8,000 on my MasterCard, and the creditors are calling me, and I'm ignoring them when I'm 24 years old with my shitty Best Buy camcorder, and I'm taking insane risks to build something out of nothing when everyone's telling you that it can't be done and it won't be done, and I'm stupid for even thinking about it. And 14 years later, I'm dry heaving in a floor, being removed from that which I found. It is a pain that is impossible to articulate unless you've been there. Other people have been there, by the way. I'm not the only one. There's churches, hospitals,
Of course. Yeah.
but it was bizarre. Um, and and I and I was on the floor like a boxer. And my one of my advisors, I won't say who, but a brilliant man, who there have been people that have been there for me. He said, "You need to get the fuck back up.
Yep.
You are wounded right now, and everything inside of yourself is stay down, go hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada, sail around the No, 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 get back up." And he said, "There's an army of people out there who believe in you now more than ever, and frankly are inspired by this." In fact, one of those people was the Pfizer whistleblower, a woman named Debbie Bernal, was one of two Pfizer executives or individuals. And she was so inspired by what happened that when we spoke, she said, "I'll go on the stage with you."
Wow.
This is
Okay.
March 1st. This is 10 days after this happened. And so it so I had to channel something within me to reach deep inside of myself. And the only way I could do that, and this is perhaps a little psychological, was to not focus on the trauma and the pain, but to focus on the creative, passionate side, just to try to find any way to focus on the reason why I started to begin with.
Folks, experts say that China is hoarding a massive amount of food. They'll soon have over 2/3 of the globe's corn reserves, over half its rice, and over half its wheat. But when asked about it, China lies. One China expert said they, of course, will never admit to doing something like that. Well, what does China know that we don't? When it comes to global food shortages, China is the canary in the coal mine. You see, China is the world's #1 food importer. They rely on the rest of the world to keep their people fed, so they can't afford to mess up, or there'll be riots, civil panics, or even worse, when over 1 billion people can't eat. So, what does this mean for Americans? 2 words: food shortages. That's why it's a smart idea to stock up on a kit of the best selling Four Patriots survival food. You can create your own stockpile of the best selling Four Patriots survival food kits, which are hand packed in the USA. They're compact and stack easily, and they have delicious different breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And their 5-star reviews on the website rave about the flavor and taste. Right now, you get 10% off of Four Patriots survival food by typing in the code MALICE at checkout. Go to 4Patriots, that's the number 4, 4patriots.com, and use code MALICE to get 10% off your first purchase of 4Patriots survival food. That's 4patriots.com, use code MALICE. Folks, Michael Malice here, podcaster, author, and yes, underwear model. Sheath is something that I wear every day, and the great thing about Sheath underwear is that they have dual pouch technology for both parts of your anatomy. They also have a girls line. I don't wear that stuff. Dave Smith might. Go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice. You get 20% off. It's great underwear for when it's cold. It's great underwear for when it's hot. And I wear it every single day because it's the best underwear I've ever owned. The first time they brought into the studio, I was like, what is this? And now I swear by it. And in fact, I model for them. It's got added comfort, added performance, added mobility. And there's something a little subversive about talking to someone while the whole time your underwear is cupping your junk. I'm not going to lie. I do enjoy that aspect of it. And folks, they're not just an underwear line. Sheath now has bamboo hoodies and shirts, which are really, really soft. So go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice. You get 20% off your order. Support the underwear that supports you and that supports the show. Let's get back to the show. Let's talk about the recent successes you guys have already had. You've certainly hit the ground running with O'Keefe Media Group, which I think is to your credit. Can you talk about some of the recent stories that you broke and the reactions that you've gotten from the corporate press and your erstwhile colleagues?
Well, I mean, the FEC story is probably the biggest. These are Act Blue donations that were given to us by a citizen group, voter integrity group. We knocked on the doors of people that the FEC data shows were given thousands of contributions to Act Blue, which doesn't make any sense. Why would one person contribute thousands of times? And all these people, admitted Democrats, were like, well, we didn't do that. And what we want to do is decentralize journalism. So we we are trying to now enable and immobilize thousands of people to go do this. So we've been shipping cameras, these $700 cameras, the fancy ones, hidden cameras, to people. If they go on our website and fill out this form, we'll ship you the camera. So the FEC people started knocking on doors as well. So I view it sort of like, remember Bob Ross, the painter, and he's
Of
painting,
course.
and he's especially, he's an artist, but he's sort of like coaching you while he's painting. He's like, this is a happy accident, this is a tree. So what I'm doing now, I feel like my new life's mission is to teach people how to do what I do, and to try to create an ecosystem where a lot of other citizen journalists can actually go do it, but they're going to need coaching and mentoring and equipment. And but I believe it has to be a decentralized. After what we've seen with Tucker Carlson, after what we've seen with me, after what we've seen with the boards of these news organizations at ABC and Fox and everywhere, it's got to be completely decentralized. So we did the FEC story, which was decentralized, and a lot of citizens knocked on doors. It's led to some congressional action. I don't have the answers to all these questions, why they're apparently money laundering, but we're knocking on doors. We did a story on Dylan Mulvaney, the Bud Light girl.
Oh, that was when you. Oh, okay, let's talk about this because let's break this down. Because I personally am kind of irritated by how much conservative media is fixated on Dylan Mulvaney.
Right.
Because it's the corporate press just kind of anoint someone as basically like the Pope of LGBT people, and everyone just goes along with it. You So Dylan Mulvaney is basically cosplaying as a girl. I don't even consider him really a trans person because he's like a 14-year-old basically dressing up like Audrey Hepburn. He's in this hotel. You're chasing him down with your mic. You got him in the elevator. Pure panic. Can you break down that? Like, how'd you know Dylan Mulvaney was going to be there? Were you surprised that there was no one around him? Did you chase? Like, what was the
Yeah.
whole? Break that
Well,
down
first
for
of
us.
all, the context here is, we did a story on a jail in Washington State where transgenders, I guess these are biological born men pretending to be women, were in the jail with women, right?
Right.
People say, why does anyone care about inmates? Well, there's an Eighth Amendment to the Constitution, cruel and unusual punishment. So men raping women in jail, it's just, that to me seems like an area where we need reform. Perhaps we need transgender jails. I don't know. I don't know the solution. Anyway,
Here's the thing. Hold on. Let me just say one thing. I'm a very small man. If I'm going to jail, I'm going to say I'm transgender just for my own safety. I don't care. Why
right.
wouldn't I? Why wouldn't it's such an incentive? It's like, why wouldn't you rather be housed with
Yeah.
females than with males? The
And this
worst of
is
the
a
worst.
new problem. Wasn't a problem 10,
Right.
20 years ago. So these men are in jail, and these men have these I'm sorry, these men who are now women had a rapists. They were convicted of child rape and child porn, and they're in the
Right.
prison with women in
Right.
this Washington State women's prison. So these sources reached out to me. I air the recordings, and I decide to go ask Dylan Mulvaney because he, they, she, I don't know. Every time I use these words, the comments go crazy. So Dylan has been sort of anointed as this leader of this movement with everything. So I go question her. So you may ask, how did you find this person? This is a great question. We have an insane team at OMG. The things that we do in the field are like not mission impossible, but like along those lines, like magical.
Okay.
We're staking him out for hours, and another paparazzi is also doing so. We get into this wild car chase through Los Angeles. We're making lefts, making rights, turning, turning on red when we shouldn't be. And we get to this hotel, the Four Seasons. At this point in time, the paparazzi, which is also following Dylan, is sort of like taunting us. Oh, you thought you had an exclusive, but we're with the. But in this process of the chase, the paparazzi goes, to hell with this, and gives up. We don't. We get to the Four Seasons Hotel, and at just the and I have a source inside the hotel who's tipping me off that she's there. She's going to be there. So we're inside the hotel, and Mulvaney then goes into the women's restroom. My person comes out and says, "She's in the restroom." This is a perfect opportunity. So I go in there with my flag mic. I put it in my blazer. I'm standing next to the restroom without being compromised, so that the person at the front desk knows I'm a journalist to kick me out of the hotel. And she's in the restroom for quite a long time. I don't know, 10 minutes. At the perfect
Well,
moment,
she's doing number 3.
good one. Right. The perfect moment in time, I take the flag out, and there you have it. And then she awkwardly has to go to the front desk to check into a room, and I'm sort of sitting there, and some people frown upon this sort of thing, and I'm sure some of your commenters will not. Some of them may not like it. Some people believe it's voyeuristic. Some people believe that it's about heat as opposed to light. My perspective is that it's part of the accountability process to make people uncomfortable, to hold them accountable, to kind of get in their face and ask tough questions. I think that's important.
So, from the footage I've seen, Dylan just seemed to be in a state of complete panic, and was just basically frantically running around. Face to face, was that energy the same in person as it came off on camera?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, she said get out of the elevator, and perhaps I could have stayed in the elevator and been a little obnoxious. When people ask me to leave, I generally leave. I try to respect. I try to, consent. I might chase after them. Yeah, I think people are caught off guard. It's an oh shit moment. I mean, it's an OMG, OMG, and um, for me, it's weird because for me, I'm in the calmest state of my existence doing that sort of thing. That's where I need to be. That's my Zen state. Because I'm in the moment. It's like a race car driver who can't think about anything else. So it's hard for me to remark on myself, my mind state, and what I'm believing because I'm in a different dimension when I'm chasing the bad guy, so to speak. Not that she's bad, but chasing whatever story I'm trying to chase. And it happens real fast. And in all of these things that we're doing, you'll see another one tomorrow. We're dropping a story as of the filming. It's 3 o'clock Eastern time, but we're dropping a story tomorrow at noon Eastern, and you'll see me do this with another story where I'm walking up to this official on a public street. No, I'm not on private property. I'm across the street on a highway, and the official drives towards me in her, government vehicle and says, "You guys cannot be here." I'm talking to a journalist. I say,
Yeah, yeah.
"Excuse me, ma'am. What do you mean I can't be here? I have a First Amendment right." And then she drives away. So it's all these like weird things happen when you're in the field, when you've got your crew, when you're running around. Magical things happen, interesting things happen. That's my favorite place to be. What I want to do next is bring citizen journalists, teach them how to do this. I want like people in the street with microphones, like holding. I want like 1,000 people doing this. Don't you?
Oh,
Don't we
yes.
want people, not just James, but don't we want 1,000 people chasing around the attorney general in Washington and asking him questions? Because this the kabuki theater you see in Congress,
Right.
that doesn't work for us, does it?
No. One last question about the whole Dylan thing. In person, does Dylan Mulvaney look like a biological female, or does it look like a man in clown makeup, or somewhere in between?
Dylan looks like, I mean, it was Burberry and kind of the hair that swoops out, sort of like an 1960s a style. Um, my only comment is it was very, very high society. Like when we were uh,
Okay.
in staking Dylan out, there were multiple black SUVs. Talk about black cars. Holy shit! They were black car upon black car. We had makeup artist upon makeup artist comes in. Another makeup artist comes in. So it's high society. It's expensive and kind of a high maintenance lifestyle to project this image, which I don't have any moral problem with that, I suppose, but it is what it is.
Your welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Now, most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to me talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you could be doing right now, which is getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy. You can save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles in your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $698 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Let's get back to the show. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about someone who does something maybe in some ways analogous to what you're doing, and that is Alex Stein. Last week, he had Eric Swalwell walking into the House of Congress and was in true Alex Stein fashion yelling, "Hey Eric, remember when you slept with that Chinese spy?" And asked if she gave him anal. Like, what are your thoughts about him doing that kind of thing?
Well, what was people's reaction to that? Was there what I mean?
I think it was overwhelmingly positive, and from my personal perspective, and I'm very eager to hear your thoughts. I think it's very useful to it's very different what you're doing, but I think a lot of times these people are on pedestals
Yeah.
when they are just absolutely the scum of the earth. And to treat these authority figures with respect when they should be treated with disdain at an absolute minimum, I
Yes.
think aligns things in kind of a chiropractor sense to what my sense of decency would require.
That is the perfect answer. You probably said it. I said something similar about an incident that happened between me and a CNN reporter many years ago,
Yeah,
where you probably know this, but I tried to get a CNN reporter on a boat and
right.
with strawberries
It's
and
in the book.
champagne
Yep.
and a captain's hat. Now, I didn't even occur to me that this would be considered sexist because I was focusing on what you just said, which was the disdain that these people have for us and the kabuki theater that is the American government right now, and it's how much of a joke and how much artifice pervades our body politic. So I mean, Alex Stein is permitted to use the word quote anal in a question because the system is so broken. It's so it is so we have crossed the event horizon.
James, hold on, hold on. You just blew an opportunity. You're supposed to say the system is so fucked.
System is yeah. See, you're better at that. You're better at that stuff than I am. You've got those. You got jokes. You've got jokes. Um, but there's another thing I'll say about Alex. That this is the more important thing, in my opinion, regardless of what what words he uses to choose in his interrogatories. He's fearless. He's fearless.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the quality about Stein. He has no fear. Have you?
right.
I mean, he's laughing in the face of these people. He's laughing at them. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon, by the way. Saul Alinsky said that. Jon Stewart really perfected that in the early
Yes,
2000s. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Now, he's got that, and he's also got absolute fearlessness. He's
yes.
like dancing around with people who are assaulting him and Antifa with guns, and he's like, ah, guns. I mean, it's refreshing because everyone is so damn afraid of everything,
Yeah,
and they manifest their fears by focusing. It's almost like people are afraid of fear. It's like they're not only afraid, they're afraid of fear. And this guy's laughing with a selfie stick and all. So that's the thing. I look at Alex and I go, man, um, there's a guy that's not focused on the fear.
yeah. Can you talk a bit more about how people can get involved with O'Keefe Media Group and what you're planning on doing in the near medium future?
Well, we're a subscription based news organization. We're not a nonprofit. You can't donate, but you can subscribe. And I don't have a board. I own it completely, and you own it by virtue of the fact that you subscribe. So you can go on our website, click the button, and it will sponsor a camera that will ship out. We'll also send you a certificate for a certain amount of money. You'll get a video of me personalized. Uh, we're going to be doing these master classes. I call them O'Keefe Academy. You'll see one out next week on how to do this sort of journalism. So it'll be about ethics. It'll be about technology, about consent laws, about how to identify what a story is. We're going to try to teach people. We are going to teach people how to do it, and we're going to start with this class that we did at the Cronkite Journalism School last week at Arizona State, where I actually taught a real live classroom of young journalists journalism ethics. Because if you don't have integrity, if you don't have a sense of right and wrong, and sometimes it's
You
hard to
should be a
know.
journalist.
Yeah, right, right.
Um, a side note, in your professional opinion, I am learning how to drive next week, and I am going to want to film this because it's going to be an amazing content.
Mhm.
What camera would you recommend we use in kind of the dashboard to get
I
the
mean,
best kind of result?
the least complicated solution probably be a GoPro, like a
Okay,
GoPro, and they make a mount. You put it in there. That's what I use when I do anything in the car. We have
okay.
more complicated, like cash cab. That's a little sophisticated. So I would just use a GoPro and a mount. Mhm.
I was on Cash Cab. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
And in fact, I, screwed with the host, Ben Bailey, so much he snapped at me at one point, and I tried to be like, "How obnoxious can I be?" to see how they edit around, and when I leave, they give you fake money. I have the money framed in my house. I turned to the camera, I said, "This is all going up my nose," and that got cut, of course.
Uh,
Um, but yes, that was one of my finest hours was being on
which
Cash
year
Cab.
was that?
Oh god, this was before 2006. This was forever. This was forever ago. So I don't even remember. But it's on YouTube and people pop it up every so often. They're like, "Did you know Michael Mouse on Cash Cab?" And it was my
How
finest
did that
hour of my
work? How
life.
did you get in the cab? Like, what was that? It
So they interview you for ostensibly another show called City Spots, where you're supposed to bring a friend and they say, "Oh, the producers are at this other location. We're gonna hail a cab." And if you watch the YouTube of my Cash Cab appearance, you can see me point to my hand because I had figured it out, and I had written Cash Cab on my hand. So it
uh,
was, but it's very. I got an easy question wrong because when you're in there, the adrenaline, which I'm sure is something you've experienced very many times in your life, is through the roof, and your brain functions differently when you're in that state than if it's just like taking a test or having just a conversation like this one.
ah, well, what I was thinking is cash cab would be good in like a place like DC, like picking up bureaucrats and government officials.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? That might be something
But
I do.
but the thing is they screen you for it, so it's not really impromptu at
Oh,
all.
I see. Well, I mean, like, I'm talking about an impromptu cab.
I mean, isn't that like kidnapping? That doesn't seem like a very illegal.
Well, I'd have to check with the attorneys, but actually picking people up in an actual taxi, but just
Oh my
record.
god,
So
that
you're
would
in.
be amazing.
What do you think? What do you think about that idea? Like, you're in.
I
The Chicago
I
Sun-Times did something like in Chicago in 1976 where they like bought a bar and they just filmed everything, and it was all like city inspectors taking bribes. Like, what if I just wired up a big? How about a black car? How about that? We'll do the black car. What if I just wired up a black car and just recorded all the trips that pick up all the government bureaucrat, record everything.
I think people would be surprised how singularly unimpressive these people are in real life.
Okay, that's the takeaway.
Am I wrong?
No, I mean, no, that's one takeaway. It's your takeaway. My takeaway might be the conversations they're having on the phone
Oh yeah.
about what they do.
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't know what those would be, but it would be interesting to hear officials in the federal government discuss their day on the phone with their loved one or their friend or their boss. How unimpressive they are probably be something. Yeah, I agree. How
I'm remembering some story where that Molly Hemingway broke because she was on the Acela, and this was during impeachment. I forget who she was on the Acela with, maybe Jared Nadler, and they were talking very loudly into their cell phone, and she was just sitting there taking notes, and she's like, "Oh my god, this is just completely irresponsible." So these people, one of the reasons I'm so optimistic about the future, and I'm confident you'll agree with me on this point, is that these people are not, by and large, particularly impressive human beings. They're not like, holy crap, they're amazing. They're often quite unintelligent and certainly unimpressive.
Now they don't build anything in DC. There's
Yeah.
industry. There's no there's no innovation. There's no creation. It's a people who stir the pot and trade and buy and sell each. They just trade information. So that's in my opinion what makes them so uninteresting. But what would be very interesting would be to record all their cab rides. Come on, that's a good idea. Maybe that's what OMG might do. Hint, hint. If you're in the back seat of a car, it's got to be a black car. Gotta be a
Yes, always bet on black. James, we're running out of time.
yes.
What has been your favorite part of this interview?
My personal favorite is it's almost like therapy with Mike Malice, but talking about how it felt to go through what I went through, and I reckoned with whether I should talk about that. I don't necessarily want to because I believe the forward mirror in your car always has to be bigger than the rear view mirror. And I don't really want to talk about that, but I was honest and transparent about the heaving on the bathroom floor because I'm a human and I was reacting to a situation. I hope it doesn't give the people that have decided to oppose me too much supply, to borrow a narcissistic metaphor, to do that. But I enjoyed sharing that with you because it was a real thing and it happened, and it was nice to talk about.
You are welcome.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Pedicy.
I love hearing people's stories of resilience and grit. This is why I created this podcast.
We are very excited to welcome Jim Gaffigan, Yasmin Mohammed, Glenn Beck, Tim Dillon, Abigail Schreier, Jeff Garland, Ayan Hirsi Ali, Sam Harris, Heather Hying, Jonah Goldberg, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Greenwald, Sarah Shahi, Colin Quinn.
If there's a culture of victimhood, then let's tell stories of grit and survival.
Subscribe and listen now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
See what's streaming free all month long during Amplify AAPI Voices on Pluto TV. Watch shows like Kim's Convenience with Simu Liu and amazing movies like Meet the Patels and Jason Momoa in Braven. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies and TV shows available on live and on demand. Download Pluto TV on all your favorite devices for free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.